Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Like what, 10 minutes break? Uh, but yeah, just, it's good to have those breaks in between 2 hour sessions, 4 hour sessions. Sorry. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining once again, and we will continue to from where we had left before. Uh, before going on break, which was we were creating this book row template kind of where we are passing in the data. We saw the data, so that's how we made some decisions there about what is in the data and what it should look like and what should we focus on, which keys, which values, and all those things. Now let's, before going on break, we actually talked about how images, if provided a URL, they actually load the image without actually waiting for uh, what do you call, without doing any fetch request or anything. So we will take advantage of that fact, and with that, let's continue. uh, Allowing you to also, I'd shared the link to the code, so I hope everyone has the exact same code that I have, uh, which I did basically before going on the break. Okay, cool. So let's continue. And okay, so in our case, what's the next thing that we want to focus on? We want to focus on uh, getting the cover image, right? Yes, let's focus on that. I'll give you the complete screen. Also, oh yeah, by the way, please do register for the session if you haven't already. So this is the part 6 and the final session. So by the end of this session, our book library project will be complete. Okay, so please do register for the session. It would be really helpful to me, to you, to MLH. Okay, so please do that. Uh, and as always, you can also find the recording of these sessions on YouTube later. So if you are missing it out, or you can't follow along right now for some reason, like for me, as per my phone, it's actually my bedtime. So let's say if it's your bedtime and you can't follow it, you can watch it later on YouTube on the Major League Hacking channel. Or if you want to watch it on YouTube live right now, you can do that as well. Okay, uh, the Major League Hacking YouTube channel link is in the chat. Okay, moving ahead, let's get back to coding. So getting the cover image. uh, okay, so let's start by first focusing on it. So I will say const cover image equals row dot query selector and dot cover dash image. Okay, that's what we want to get. And if book dot cover underscore I, now this is something that we can check. Need a book though. Angels and demons. Angels, I think it's an ampersand and plus demons. I think this should get me the correct book. Yep. And now if there is a cover I, which is this cover ID, okay, you can think of it cover ID. So if this exists, in that case, we will say that cover image dot data set dot cover ID is equal to the book dot cover underscore I. Now then we'll do cover image dot add event listener, and we'll add the event listener of a click event, and then we will call the load book cover function that we will create in just a few seconds. So what are we saying? that when someone clicks on the cover image, in that case, internally go and fetch the book cover image. Okay, so initially every book cover would be like that placeholder image that I had shown in the last video. So yeah, every book will be like that, but let's say once someone clicks on that, in that case it will go in and it will try to fetch it. Okay, uh what else? Hmm, okay, uh the next thing I think we should do is set up the action buttons. Okay, so as I had said that in the library view, specifically the library view, we will have two buttons. One is like mark it as read, or if it is mark it as read, then opposite of it would be like mark it as unread, or you can delete it from the library. So let's focus on those buttons as right now. So const mark button equals row dot query selector dot mark dash button. Okay, and const delete button, that would be not results body, sorry, row dot query selector, there would be a dot delete dash button. Okay, these are the two buttons that we want. This is coming from the template. There we go. Okay, so this class is what we are focusing on, and this button actually has two classes. It has delete button class and hidden class. We are saying that if you find this one, get me that button. So const book key equals book dot key. So let's go and search if this exists, and this will actually, let me be a bit more explicit and let me search for key. There we go. Okay, key books, like sorry, slash works slash some id. Okay, so book key, this is going to be unique in our case, and I'm going to say that if is library view, now this is specifically valid in the library view, in that case we will say that the delete button dot class list dot remove the hidden. Okay, so what does this do? Let's try it out. So I copy this, let's go to our library and let me add that. Row is not defined. uh is there any button which has two classes? Let's say this search button. uh yep, let me search for this search button, and this is temporary. Okay, you don't have to do this, this is just to show you. uh okay, I will give it a class of my dash btn dash 1, my dash btn dash 2. Okay, so now let me paste, not paste this. What we want is document, document, document dot, yeah, query selector, and in that case we want a button which is my dash btn dash 1. Okay, that should get me this button. Now this has two classes. Now I want to assign the above thing to const sb. Okay, search button. So now if I do sb dot class list, and if I hit enter, you see it has like there are two things in the array. Okay, there is my btn1 and my btn2. Now if I say dot remove on this, and then I pass in which class I want to remove, I want to remove my dash btn dash 2. So now if I do this sp.class list, that class has been removed. And if we go into the elements, as you can see, this is now only, this only has one. If I reload this, like basically that's a fresh start, and it has two initially. But if we do what I did just right now, which is take this and then remove something, and then you're left with one. So you can remove something. So why are we doing this? Because from the delete button perspective, initially it would be, let's say, hidden, or like the idea is that uh, from the library view perspective, the delete button is, let's say, disabled, not disabled, and depending on if it is added to library or removed from library and all those things, we'll remove toggle between these class lists. Okay, major goal was to show you what is the class list. Okay, and as the name says, it's a list of all the classes, or an array in JavaScript. If you're coming from Python world, you definitely understand list. Now next one is delete button dot add event listener. So if someone actually clicks on the button, in that case we'll call a function called as remove from library. And what do we want to remove? We want to remove the book, like we'll pass it the book key, that should get removed, and then we will do a dot then load library. Now that this is another function that we will create. We have a lot of functions that we want to create. Let me actually make a list of all the functions that we will create very quickly. If I scroll up, starting from, what's the first thing that we did? We started with initdb. So this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. The show loading is one of the things that we wanted to do in the search box. So we let me actually change this to show loading to true. What else? Actually, on top where we print the success, we will also do the load library. Okay, so once the database has been successfully created, we want to load all the books that are saved in the database. Okay, also you can think of it that we are calling the load library when the user refreshes, the database already exists, the indexdb already exists, so you want to fetch all the books. So that is why we are going to add the load library there. Similarly, right here, uh, after the console.error, we'll also call a function show error, a custom function, inside which we can pass like database error and this thing. In, let's say, backticks, and this could go in as a variable. Okay, so I think this should be good enough. Okay, search books is fine. Show loading, yes, that is, I guess, good. Then after this we will display the search results. So display search results, and here we will pass it the limited docs. Okay, so basically a shortened version of the search, only 10 results. And if we face an error, we will call the show error again, and we can show a message like failed to fetch books, and then whatever is the error, which we will get from error dot message. So this error variable actually contains message. And finally, we will do the show loading goes to false. Okay, so initially it is set to true here, now it will be set to false. This function we have not written it yet, but I'm basically replacing anything and everything where the function would be needed. Here we will say show error, no books found. Okay, so that's another error that we will show if there are no books. When, like, you, if you, let's say, search for blah 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 blah, I'm hoping there's no book like that. So in that case it will show, of course, this error on the screen. And if, let's say, there is an error on the screen and you search again, you should clear the error. So you'll also create this clear error function. Okay, so you see how functional we are with our project. Like, everything is divided into small chunks or small functions to do stuff. uh, Create book row, I think it's fine. Cloning the template, we're already doing that. We are then going through the query selectors, uh, getting the cover image. What else? Mark button, delete button, this, remove from library. Okay, this, okay, I think this should be good enough. Now inside the library view, we are still inside the library view, we will also add a const is read equals to book dot is read. Now this is an interesting one. So book dot is read, it will not exactly come for people who are not logged in. They have a API actually for my books. Okay, but in our case we are going to say that like, we'll create a custom book dot is read, uh, which initially would be like what kind of undefined, and then we'll go like update the read status button, and it will be we'll pass it the mark button, and if it is read. Okay, if it has already been read, and you can click on the button to toggle between two states. One is mark it as read or mark it as unread. Okay, so we'll add a event listener saying that if someone clicks on this button, on specifically this button, that is why mark button dot add event listener. Okay, if someone clicks on that button, then in that case, actually we want to do this asynchronously because we'll have to update the database. So asynchronously book dot is read equals to whatever is the previous state. So previously, if, let's say, book dot is read was true, then not book dot is read. Okay, which converts it to false. Then we will wait for add to library the book and update the read status button to be mark button and book dot is read. Okay, okay, what else? Anything else? No. Now we'll actually write the else part if this is not in the library view. So right now we were doing all of this in the library view. What if we are not in the library view? What do we do then? We will say that the mark button dot text content actually at that time says add to library. Okay, so when you're on the search page and you click on that mark button, you want it not to be called as mark as read or unread, you want it to be called as add to library. And we will uh, add slash remove uh, so currently actually it does not have any class, but later on we could kind of technically add a class. Okay, yes, we can add a class when we are doing the read status. So for now actually what I want to do is remove the things that I will eventually add. So I want to remove the read and I also want to remove the unread class. So these are two classes that we will add. We have not added it yet. Okay, please listen to me very carefully. These are the classes that we have not added yet, but for the same button. Uh, think of it as being very modular. Let's say this search button should also be called as debug button. So when it's on the search books page, it should be called as search button. When it's on the my library page, it should be called as debug button. So this first line, it says to change the name from search to debug. The second line says that when it's on this, like assuming, okay, just assume with me that when I'm on the search page, I add a class my button 1 and my button 2. But when I go on the my library page, for this same button, I want to remove these two classes, my button 1 and my button 2, and I want to add a new class there. Okay, like my button 3 as a third class, something. So yeah, that is what this is doing, that remove the two classes. It also reminds me I should remove my button 1 and my button 2. If I find it, yes, there we go. Perfect. So yeah, these are the two uh, classes that I will add. But if they are not, and that is only when they are in library view. When they are in search books view, then I don't want those classes. And why am I doing it this way? Why can I not create another button? Because we are following the template. Okay, we created a template specifically for this reason, so that we can reuse it, okay, by changing very slight things. So the next part is, if let's say a book is already in the library, then we don't want to click on add to library again. So let's create a function for that, which we'll create in a bit. But for now, let's write it. Check if in library the book key that we have, and since that is unique, then we'll say existing book. So I'm creating a variable called as existing book. If it is an existing book, in that case, the mark button dot text content should basically say already in library. And if that is true, if it is like already in library, then the mark button should be disabled. So we will say dot disabled equals to true. Yeah, I know load library is not defined. That's okay. So search button is this button. Okay. Now if I do search button dot disabled equals to true. Okay. Now search button dot disabled is true. Okay. Initially it was false. So if it is disabled, you see there's this new thing that comes in, disabled. Okay, this is a attribute saying that this button is disabled. You can always style the button a bit more, saying that, oh, the button is disabled, so then the color should be something different. The arrow key should not come here. All those things could be added, but when you disable a button, it is no longer clickable. Okay, that's the idea of disabled. Of course, initially it's not disabled, but yeah, if you mark it as disabled, you get that extra thing there. Else, so if it is not an existing book, then in that case what will happen, the text content will remain as like add to library, uh, but we also want to add a event listener again on that button, saying that if someone clicks on it, if someone clicks on the button called as add to library, what do you think should happen? It should add it to the library, right? So we'll say asynchronously, because it can take time to load the database, add the book to library, all those things. So we are going to wait for add to library, and that will take in a spread of book. Okay, what does this mean? This dot 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 syntax, the dot dot dot, these three dot syntax, it basically means that whatever is the existing, add on to it. Okay, uh, add on to the existing thing, take all the values of this book that we have. Okay, and in that, in this book that you're adding, also add the is read to false. That initially when you add a new book to the library, it is not read. Okay, it is just added to the library. You have just think of add to library as just bought the book. Okay, if you have just bought the book, you have not read it. So we are saying that spread over the book, take all the variables that we have created, take all the existing ones, add to the end of existing one, but when you are adding it, ensure that this particular book is not read, is read false. Now we'll say mark button dot text content is going to be called as added to library. Okay, because it was initially called as add to library, now it will be called as added to library. And mark button dot disabled equals to true, and then we will in the back, like not in the background, then we'll say load the library, so that when user switches over to my library, the book is there. And finally, right before we come outside of this, we will return the row, return the row that we created right now. Next bits, uh, by the way, how's everyone? Exciting? Making sense? Things making sense, not making sense? uh, don't worry, we'll see it in action and it will just suddenly all make sense. The next one is const load book cover, one of the things that we had created. Asynchronously, it will have a event here. Like you can give it any variable you want. In our case, we are interested in event dot target, and now we'll say const cover id, a new variable that we are creating inside. In that case, we'll say image dot data set dot cover id. If cover id exists, in that case, what we want to do is in the image dot src, where src is the attribute which we had seen in the library html, this src, we want to change this url to the new url. Okay, so image.src equals to, what's the first part of the url going to be? It is going to be the covers api that we had. Then it will have slash id and then slash dollar cover id, and then we'll always ask for the small version because we don't want to overwhelm their server. And we can also console log this. So console.log fetching cover, and then we can kind of take this thing and paste it right here without the semicolon. Semicolon goes outside the bracket. We can also go for medium if you want. I think I would prefer the small for now because yeah, I don't want to overwhelm their server and we have a set size. Okay. Another function that we want to create is the update red status button. So if you mark a book as red, we want to add a class which is red. If you want mark a book as unread, then we want to add a class called as unread. And adding or removing the class is so that we can in CSS actually give it a color. So if I search for a red, button.red, it is going to be green. If button.unread, then it is going to be this red color. Okay. Amount of times I've said unread and red, I don't know. Anyways, so yeah, ideally we are doing this so that we can give it a specific class. Now this function will take in two things. First is which button are we talking about? That's the first thing. Second thing is it red or not? Now we'll say button dot text content. If it is red, okay, is it red already? Then mark it as unread. Unread. Else mark it as red. What we are saying is if the book is already read, then if the button should say mark it as unread, or if the book is not already read, then mark it as read. Now button dot class list, you remember that gives us a list. We want to first remove all the classes. Okay, not all, like these two classes, and then depending on if it is read or unread, if the user has read the book or unread the book, we'll do a add, and inside the add we will check if it is read, then give it the class of read, else give it the class of unread. And that's our update status button function done. The next one, add to library. Yeah, now const add to library, that's another function. This is so that we can add a book to the library. Now this one is interesting. Why? Because you remember wherever we used add to library, we did this async and await. Okay, and right now it says 3 dots because it thinks that, oh, add to library does not really need to be a async function, is not a async function, so why are you awaiting it? But inside this, what we are going to say is return new promise. Okay, and a promise can either be fulfilled or rejected, or and initially it is in the pending state. So the fulfilled is called as resolve and the rejected is called as reject. And now we will say const transaction equals to the db that we had created, the let thing dot transaction, and in this case we will say take the store name, which is our table name, which is books, and then on that you have to do a operation of read write. Okay, so you should be able to read what is in the tables, in the books table, and also should be able to write on it. So that's what we have started here, and that can take time. Okay, so that is why it's a promise. And now we'll say transaction dot object store name and const request, not import, request equals to store dot put. And what do you have to do? Take all the book and the book data and assign it, like the key is going to be the book dot key, which is going to be unique. So every row, if you remember our Google Sheets, if I find it again quickly, yep, there we go. So here you can think of it as the every ID is going to be unique. Okay, so every row will have a unique ID, and that is what makes it different, or at least like there would be no repetition here, is a basic understanding. Like you need at least one row which is going to be unique, so that you can refer back, or you can get data of that row by saying that, oh, get me the data with ID 3, because that is going to be unique. Okay, so that's what we are doing here, and we are saying that the key is going to be the book dot key, which is going to be unique. Now this request could either be successful or it could be failure. So if request dot on success, if it is a successful request, in that case we want to say that this promise has resolved, so we'll call the resolve function. But if it fails, like for some reason, what if someone deletes the database while they are adding, while the function is adding it, in that case we will just say rejected, and then we'll also give it the request dot error, like what is the error, why did it get rejected, is what we'll pass back. And now if you go, magically all the awaits are working fine. Previously it was saying that, oh, there's no need. Now it understands that this could either fail or pass. So it's a promise, and it could either fail or pass, so I need to wait for this promise to finish. Okay, uh, the way we have add to library, similarly we will have a remove from library. And this will take in a key, like which row to remove. Do you want to remove, like in this case, do you want to remove this row 2, row with ID 2, or row with ID 3, or row with ID 4, or row with ID 1, like which one do you want to remove? So that is why the key, and again this would be promise. Okay, because again it could either, it's possible to remove it, or it's also possible that you couldn't remove it for some reason. Maybe uh, someone has already removed it, in that case it couldn't find it, or maybe someone deleted the database while it was being removed, so again it couldn't find the database, couldn't open, or couldn't find the table, couldn't open it, and it failed, right? So once again we will do const transaction, it's going to be db dot transaction. Also I'm getting this syntax from the, like from MDN. Okay, so it's not like something that I know by heart or something. You have to, if you check the documentation, you will find that they reference all of this there. So read write, example, if I search for transaction, yeah, there we go, transaction, store name and mode. Okay, so store name in our case is the that store name variable that we have created. There's a read only, there's a read write, there's a read write flush, which has an exclamation, I'm assuming, which says don't use it because not every browser supports it. It's experimental apparently right now. And you can see which browsers support it right now by scrolling down. Currently, none of the browsers actually support the read write flush mode. So yeah, please don't use it yet. Okay, moving on to the next bit. What do we want to do next? Oh yeah, we want to complete this, right? So transaction, there we go. Then const store is equal to transaction dot object store. Okay, and store name. Now what is this object store? MDN. There we go. The object store method returns an object store that has already been added to the scope of this transaction. So we created a transaction. Then where are we doing this transaction? Which table are we doing this transaction on? Kind of. That is what is returned. Okay. So in the scope of this transaction, which store are we targeting? And now we'll say request is, what is the request in this case? The request is to delete the key. So now let's search for delete, and there would be multiple, but we are specifically interested in the IDB, which is IndexedDB object store delete. The delete method returns blah 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 blah, and you can call it using this syntax: delete the key of the record to be deleted. Or you can also pass it a range of keys, saying that I want to delete everything from 1 to 3. Okay, so you can also do something like this, that I want to delete everything from 1 to 3. Okay. Okay, so that is the request. Now this request can either be successful or failure. So request dot on success. If this is successful and it was successfully able to delete, then we will resolve the promise, saying that, oh, yep, all good there. Now there is also possibility that this request fails. So there is an error. So if there is an error in a promise, then in that case, we will reject the promise, and then we'll also give it the request dot error, saying that, hey, your promise was rejected. It did not work out. Sorry. And this is the error. Okay. Another thing that we want to focus on is check if the book is already in the library, right? Yeah. So let's write a function for that. Check if in library. For that case, we want to see like what is unique uh, in that row. It is the key. Again, this is going to be a promise. Now slowly and steadily it's becoming a repetitive task. So I'm going to copy this whole thing and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so return new promise. Now this one should not really get rejected. Okay, like we wouldn't say that this will be rejected, because either the book is there or the book is not there. Okay, there is no reason to reject the promise. We can always say that reject it with null, saying that, oh yeah, we are returning null, that this book was not found. But we can resolve this promise by saying that request dot result, what came back from the book. Oh, okay. So before we get, so we are saying that if you are to search in a library, example, is a row with ID here? Is there a row with ID 5? Okay. Now you don't have to reject that. Oh, there is no ID 5. Reject this. No, you just have to say no. There is no ID 5. Okay. So you are going to return null, that this row with ID 5 was not found. But if you do find a row with, like if I ask, okay, what about give me a row with ID 4, then you can return me the row with ID 4, the data in the row with ID 4. So that is what we are doing here. So now this does not need to have a reject, just a resolve is fine. Like in either of the cases, we will resolve the promise in general. Okay, in both the cases, we'll resolve the promise. If it's an error, which basically means that the row was not found, in that case, we'll return a null. If it was successful, that means the row was found and we'll return that particular row. So transaction db.transaction store name. Now, since this does not need to write in the database, all it needs to do is read the database. So that is why we'll mark this as read only. And store is transaction.object store name, and request is not a delete. The request is actually to get store.get key. And on success, that should resolve to request.result. On error, it should resolve to null. So that is our check if in library done. The next one is load library that we want to focus on. So I'm going to say const load library. This one does not take anything. There's no input to this, because we want to, like, whenever something happens, in our case I think there are three things. First is that once the database has successfully loaded, then we want to load the library. Second thing is, if you are in the library view and you delete a book, then after that you want to load the library again. Third thing is, if you are not in the library view and you add a book to library, then you want to reload the library. So reloading the library is basically saying refresh the index db. Okay, it's like refreshing a page. uh, Again, we'll need a transaction and we'll need a store. So I'm going to copy this, and in this case, what should it be? Should it be a read write? No, a read only is fine, because you don't really need to write to the database. There's nothing to write. load library uh, Load library is just about reading the database and getting all the books. Okay, and there's the keyword for you, getting all the books. So in this case, the const request store.get, it won't be a particular key. We want to get everything that's there. Now, is there a possibility that this fails? I don't think so. So there would always, on this case, would be a request.onSuccess. So request.onSuccess, in this case, we will say const books. Okay, creating a new variable here, request.result. Okay, this will have all the books. The request.result will have all the books. Now we will say that the library body dot inner html, okay, set that to empty. And now for the books dot for each, so all the books that are here, in that case, for each book and each index, for each has an index. Okay, so now we will say const row equals to create a book row, which book row takes in book, it takes in the index. And since zero based indexing is active in JavaScript, we don't want to start a book with like zeroth id, first id, second id. We want to do a counting number, so 1 2 3 4. So that is why we are doing index plus 1. And is this in a library view? True. Do you remember the create book? So now we are saying that override the default and change that to true. Is this in a library view? Yes. So that's our create book row. And now we will say library body dot append child row. And that is our load library complete. What else? We have not created a toggle yet. Okay, actually, yeah, we actually have a bunch of more small things to do, take care of. One is clearing the error. So const clear error, that is another function that we had created. uh, we'll say the error element dot text content that goes to empty. Oops. That goes to empty. Then what else? We'll say error element dot class list dot add hidden. So if you want to hide the error, like let's say it's not a error anymore, then in that case, yeah, uh, let's say we got the data back. Then in that case, we don't want to show the error, so we'll hide the error. So that's what we are doing right here. So that's why the clear error, where it adds the class of hidden. And what is the class of hidden? It is actually defined in the CSS as display none. Okay, whenever you add a display none on something, it just like hides everything. So that's there. What else? The show loading. So const show loading equals to show. Okay, so this will take in a parameter which will be a boolean true or false, whether to show it or not to show it. In that case, now we'll say loading element dot class list dot toggle hidden. This hidden should be toggled between, if it is show, then it goes to not show. If it is not show, it goes to show, kind of like that. And if it is show, like if you have to show the loading, in that case, first clear the error that exists on the page. Okay, if you have to show a loading, first remove the error. So what is the scenario? What is the user scenario here? You first search for a book which, and it returns nothing. You show error. You search for a book again. You have to first clear that error and show a loading spinner again. Okay, so while that is searching. So that is the whole idea behind this show error and the toggling and the show loading. uh, Next one would be, we are clearing the error, but actually we have not written anything for showing the error. So let's write that. So const show error. Now error takes in a message. Okay, like you can call this anything that you want, any variable goes in here, but this makes much more sense that, oh, error will have a message. So the text content of the error element will be the message. And then since there is an error, then we will say that, oh, remove the hidden from this error element because we want to show this. And next is that loading element. Okay, if there is an error, you don't want to show the loader anymore, you want to show the error, so we will hide the loader. So that is why we'll add the we are adding the hidden class to loading element, saying that, oh, there is an error, I want to show the error, I don't want to show the loader, so I'm going to hide the loader. Does that make sense? Finally, I think we are reaching somewhere. We only have one more function to write, which is toggle the view. We haven't written anything to toggle between the library page and the search page. So toggle view, step one, if let's say you are on search page and you are showing an error and you move over to the my library page, that error should go away. So clear error, we are calling that. Then we will say that in the search section dot class list dot toggle. Okay, if you have moved over to the my library page, then whatever was the search result here should be hidden by default. Okay, So that's why we are going to add hidden, and this depends on, are we going to the library page or are we on the uh, what do you call, search books page. The next one is library section. Actually, I'm going to copy this because we will have to toggle few things. So search section, uh, it goes to hidden if you are going to the library. Library section, on the other hand, dot class list dot toggle, it goes to hidden if you are not showing the library. Okay. Similarly, search view button. Okay, that becomes active. That's another thing that we are going to add. If it is not in the library, the search view button, this button, it becomes active when you are in the search books, which is not library. And the library view button, that becomes active when you are in the library. So this is actually correct. uh, and now what else? There are four more things to write, like four event listeners that we want to add. The first one is called as search button. So search button, we want to add a event listener called as click event, so that someone when clicks on the search event, it should go and run the function search books. And in the search input, I want to add a event listener, which is the key press. Okay, that if you type something and you hit enter, okay, you have written some book name here and you hit enter, in that case it should uh, search the books again. So now I'm going to do if e dot key is actually the enter key. If that is the case, then search books. Okay. Next is the search view button. Dot add event listener. We will say that this is this one, search books, my library. Okay. So this will have a click event as well. And we will say that this function actually calls the toggle view and goes to false. Okay. So search button view is this one. And then we have the library button view. So library view button dot add event listener. Again, a click event on this. And here it will say that this actually shows the library. So toggle view to true. And that's it. Now let us try. The moment of truth is here. Actually, let me have console open. A very small window and zoomed out. Search books, my library. Okay, so the toggling is working. Cool. So that is our first thing. Search books and my library. Can I focus on this? Yep. Search books, my library. Do you see the class active that is being added? So search books is active right now, that is selected. So it has the class select active. Go over to my library, it gets removed from this, gets added to this. So toggle is working. Now let's go into the search books and let's search for Percy Jackson. And I hit search. Let's go over to console. Library search for, from line number 77, it tried to make a search to this URL, where you remember the question mark that we have put. Let me come back on screen. So this would be very exciting. So the question mark that we had put, so this is the first part, our base URL, and then we had a question mark, and the URL params, that thing that we had as URL search params. Okay, that helped us create this thing. We did not add a plus for sure. It added it by default. So that's good. Now we got all the books, and as you can see, this is like multiple rows. We did not have these many rows, but because of the template that we had, it actually added each row. It added like one, which is the index plus one that we had done, the book cover, which is initially a placeholder image, the book details. Well, the first one, it does not have any description, it seems. uh, Most of them don't have any description, okay, at least in these books. But the author is there, the year is there, the pages is there, the book actions, the mark button, it's called as add to library, and the delete button, actually it's not here, uh, which is fine, which is in the my library page. So if I go over to my library, there's nothing here. If I come back to search books, there's one button here, and currently the remove from library button is hidden. Let me click on this. It now becomes a add to library, and you see there's this disabled that gets added. If I hover over it, you see that there's a cross that comes in on the mouse saying that not allowed. Okay, so cool. Now if I go over to my library, there we go, there's the book. It is marked as read and remove from library. Okay, which should be this row. Yep, there we go. So now the delete button, it's active. Okay, it's not hidden anymore, and this book is initially unread. Okay, perfect. I want to mark it as read. Changes color, the CSS changes from unread to read, and the text also changes. Also, this is a very bad green, so let me actually change the green a teeny tiny bit. I want it to be a bit more darker, and even the red, I want it to be a bit more pizzazz. Yep, yep, there we go. Mark as unread, remove from library. Perfect. So that's adding our color, changing the text. I want to mark it as unread, and it changes to this color. Mark it as red. Okay, remove from library. If I do that, it will be deleted from here. Okay, and now it's no longer here. Search books, it's now this is one problem. It says it's still added to the library even though we did a remove from library. So need to fix this bug. Slash, I would leave it on to you to find where can we uh like what can we do if someone removes it from library. That works. Like if I go over to my library, it's no longer here. We can also go and check the application tab, right? In IndexedDB library books, there's nothing here. Let's say I put the second book, the Percy Jackson's, no, the third book, The Sea of Monsters, add to library. It says that data may be stale. There is a refresh here. If I go to my library, it's here. Mark as read, it's here. I can refresh this database, and there we go. This is our database. Okay. The key is that slash work, that key, book.key, and the value is actually this much. There's a lot of things in the value. Out of all of this, we are actually only focusing on one thing. Also, somewhere here would be the is read that we had added. Is read true. If I toggle it, this is false. We have to refresh the database. Yeah, is read is false. Uh, it's interesting how this does not have a description. I would have assumed that this would have a description. Okay, anyways, uh, so that's our mark as read or unread. There's one last feature that I have not shown you, which is the uh, what do you call the cover image. Yep. So if I now click on this, it goes and fetches the cover, and there is the cover. Okay. Uh, Now if I like, it's very small cover, so I don't think it's exactly visible, but it does say Percy Jackson here. You can open it in like click on it to open it, and there is a very teeny tiny option there. You can click here and preview it if you want, or you can take the URL and actually try and download the bigger image. I want to see what does the M look like. M is much better. So actually, let me make that change. Instead of downloading a S image, so dash S, I want to download the dash M image. I'm sorry. Okay, so now let's go back. And we are back on the search page. Also, the page reloaded, that's why. But it should still be in the library. So if I go into my library, there it is. And I can fetch the cover. Okay, much better looking, I would say. Okay, Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters. Perfect. Uh, what if I search for some random thing? This book. I'm pretty sure this does not exist. Let's do a search. No books found. So there's the error. If I remove this error, and now I need a book from you all. Uh, I think it was called Elements of Physics. Elements of Physics. And the author name was H.C. Verma. And I'm going to search. Oh, apparently not. Was it not called Elements of Physics? Oh, what was the book by H.C. Verma? Oh, Concepts of Physics, not Elements of Physics. Sorry, my bad. Concepts of Physics. So let me try Concepts of Physics and H.C. Verma. Okay, that's a bad idea. Is the author name not exactly like this? Oh, it's not H.C. Verma. It's properly Harish Chandra Verma. Okay, let me try this. Concepts of Physics. Search. Perfect. So based on the exact author and the book name, there we go. Can fetch the cover by clicking on it, and there's the cover. Add to library. There it is. I have not read it completely, so I'm not going to mark it as read. And interestingly, this does not have a description as well. So I wonder. But it will be in the application. You reload. There's the second one. Oh, this one. And there's your publisher, by the way. Okay, so that is it about the project. Now, before we move ahead, any questions so far, anyone? That is our project. The cover is not exactly propagated. So yeah, you have to click on it again and again to fetch the cover. We have not written any code to save the cover or anything in any way, because I wanted to show you that you could do it by clicking on it and reloading. Also, if I reload this, the search books would be gone, but my library will, of course, have everything that we have uh, added. Okay. So, any questions so far, anyone? Anything? Anyone? Everyone's too tired. Let me push the code uh, that we have till now, which is actually the complete library project. Uh, no, completed. So if you want the whole code. You can find it on GitHub. Feel free to fork the repo or clone it by doing this, or download it as a zip. Anything is fine, whatever works for you, do it. Okay. uh, Wait, we have 8 folks. Nice, good. There are at least 8 people who are interested in this, uh, but only 6 of them like it. That's fine, not a problem. You don't have to like my work. You just have to learn. Definitely. uh, okay, so that is all about the project. Now the final part of this session is going to be homework for you. Okay, and I say that with all like immense pride, because I am a kind of a person who definitely loves pushing people to learn. Okay, so the final part of the project is going to be a expense tracker. What is the idea? uh, Actually, before the idea, I can also give you the HTML for it. But the idea of expense tracker is, as the name says, it is to track your expenses. Okay, and how do you track your expenses? Well, in a form. Okay, now all the concepts that we have learned over like these 6 sessions, nearly all of them will apply, except for one thing, which is going to be uh, local storage. In our last 3 projects, in our like 3 projects that we built, we did not work with local storage. So that is, I think, one avenue that I would suggest you all to explore. So anyone who's watching this video later on YouTube, uh, this is the project for you. Build a expense tracker. I will provide you with the HTML and CSS, but definitely go through them. Still go through them. Okay, even if I'm providing it, still try and go through it. Go through the HTML and CSS code. So this is the HTML for our expense tracker, which I will push in a bit. Let me reload this page. Expense tracker. Okay, that's our HTML. Does not really look that good, but we will import the 2 style sheets. One is already imported, so I'm going to import the second one, which is the expense tracker.css. So let's create this file in the folder. So I'm going to leave writing JavaScript to you. Okay, that is my very humble request to all of you. Let's write some CSS, and there we go. This is what the expense tracker looks like after the HTML and CSS. Not really great looking, I would say, but it does the job. So we'll be content with that. Uh, Though I am curious as to why. What does my style.css say? Okay, perfect. Much better looking. Okay, so this is our HTML and CSS box sizing border box. Added a few stuff, removed a few stuff, navbar, okay, and code block. Perfect. So changes one thing. Things come down in this. Why did I do that? Font family, nope, that's not the thing. What all did I change? See, these are the problems that you might face. Okay. Don't really need this. Margin bottom is fine. Nav bar is fine. Justify content center. This is fine. Okay. Actually, I'll revert back to the original CSS that you had. I'm not going to change that. You can modify the CSS as you want, ignoring everything. Let's focus on expense tracker. So there's the HTML and there's the CSS. Uh, it has a add expense input, add amount input. You have a list of things to choose from, like a drop down of whether it's this, this one is a food expense or transport or utilities or entertainment or other expense. There's a calendar which allows you to choose a date, and there's a add expense button that should, on clicking of which, should allow you to add the expense. Now the now this is the challenge for you. Okay, listen carefully. The challenge is that when you click on add, like when you start adding an expense here, like you start writing here, and if you reload, it clears away. I don't want that clearing. So that is the challenge. Okay, figure out how would you not clear it. And I have given it a hint: local storage. Okay, so figure out how local storage works. So when the user starts typing here, you have to kind of save the input in the local storage as and when they are typing. So that ways, if they reload once they are typing or in the middle of it, it will still remain there. Okay, the data will still be there. So that is one thing. Similarly for amount, similarly for the category, similarly for the chosen date. Okay, they choose everything and then they reload the page, it should still remain as is. Add expense will go and like add the expense here, it will add the description, the like it will add a new row. So remember templates, or you want to do something similar to that. Okay, what else? Now the next thing would be actions. Yes, you want to add like remove, let's say, an expense for some reason that you have mistakenly added, you should be able to do that. And finally, yes, this is what I lost my track on, my train of thought on. You want to also add the amounts. Okay, so adding should not be that difficult. All you want to do is go over each row, find the key called as amount, and make a sum of it, and that is what should have show here. So this total should keep changing as and when new things get added to this expense list. So this is the challenge. And at the end of it, let's say when someone clicks on add expense, it should actually get added to the index tb so that it's there. If you reload the page, the expense list should still show the expense. Okay, all the expenses. So yeah, that is the project that I'm giving you all to work on. uh, Feel free to push your code, feel free to put it on Discord, show it to the world, uh, that you have learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Don't use any framework. uh, Try to go vanilla. Okay, plain JS, because we did that in 3 sessions. Okay, like not 3 sessions, 5 sessions in 3 projects, 6 sessions, 3 projects. Okay, I can show you my implementation of it. So let me quickly start that. This is my implementation of it. So if I go over to expense tracker, expense description is, let's say, going to be dinner. Amount is like I spent like 12 pounds on dinner in its food category. uh, it is 14th of January that I did this, and I add expense 14th of January, dinner in food category, amount 12 pounds. Okay, there's action of delete. Let's say I took an Uber to go home, come home, or whatever you say. 32, it is transport. And yeah, I was out all night, so on 15th I came back home, so 15th. Okay, and I forgot, oh, on 14th I also had lunch, so lunch of uh, 34 pounds, and I somehow okay, I'll actually 14th, and I reload the page, everything is still there. Okay, it did not add it down here, but it did not also remove it from the input box. So magic of local storage. uh, Add expense, and you see that it's kind of sorted in a way. 14th is together with 14th. Now I know for tomorrow, uh, I have I'm thinking I have to pay rent. Okay, and that is actually weekly, it's 500 pounds, let's say. It is utilities, and I have to do that tomorrow, so that goes to 16th. And I accidentally reload, not so accidentally, and I add expense that comes at the top right here. Okay, rent, utilities, and this is my total right now. Then I realize, oh, I've actually paid the rent. Delete that, the new total. Okay. uh, yeah, so that is the project for you all. Definitely give it a try. This is my implementation. I'm not going to push this code. Okay, so I'm going to urge you all to please, 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 please give it a try. Okay, definitely a good learning experience. Okay, so now that that is out of our way, any questions, anyone? Oh, thank you so much, appreciate this, appreciate the comment. Okay, any questions, anyone, before we go to the last and final bit that I would definitely wanted to show you all? So if you remember, sorry, I'm waiting for any questions actually. I did not have music this time. Okay, no questions. It means either it was too good or it was too bad. I'm going to go with it was too good, and I'm going to move ahead. So the one last thing that I wanted to show you all is, if you remember, I created this navbar.html, which was empty. So in this, I want to create a navbar. So the idea was that, what if, uh, you know, is there a way to kind of do a separation of concerns? Like navbar is in a separate file of its own, and it is visible on every page. Currently, how many pages do we have? So this is my implementation. Let's close it. This is our implementation. Uh, so we have a home page, we have a Pomodoro timer page, we have a box shadow generator page, we have a library page, we have an expense tracker page. So on every page, either there is, like, one way is to actually copy this chunk of code and paste it on every page. That is one idea. What if I want to do a separation of concerns? So let's see how you could do that, how you could achieve that. So I'm going to cut this code from here, going over to navbar.html, and inside the body I'm going to paste this code. Okay, so that's the only thing that I've done. Now, how do I load it on every page? So this is not JavaScript, but we know that using JavaScript we can do amazing things. So what is the amazing thing here that we want to do? We want to load this HTML file uh, on every page. So we are going to actually put it on top of every page. So how do we do that? So, like, let's say currently this is what the index.html looks like. No header. I go over to index.html, and now I want to load this page. So to do that, what I could do is, right here, I can write a script in the header, and the script is going to be window.add event listener. And you remember the DOM content loaded, which says that, oh, the page has been done loading. In that case, we will say that if the page has been loaded, go and fetch. We have used fetch. go and fetch the navbar.html file. And this is a fetch, so it returns a promise. Do you remember promise? Then you remember that you could do a chaining on that, and you could say dot then res goes to, we have used the res.json, but in this case this is actually going to be res.text. Okay, res goes to res.text, and then we'll do another chaining saying that dot then data goes to, and we will specifically search for a element, document dot get element by id, and that element is going to be navbar. And inside that, you remember there is this text content which actually gives us text. Similarly, if you want to change the html of at some id, you can do a dot inner html, and I'm going to give it this data that we got. Okay, and that's it. So now if I go here, oops, nothing is here. Why? Because we still need to add a div tag or something with this id. So inside the body, right on top. Okay, so instead of like repeating 10 lines, I can just repeat one line saying that div id equals to navbar. So this id is this id. So I can actually, let's say, call it as navbar underscore page. Okay, so this id and this id is the same, and there's nothing inside here. So this is it. And now if I go here, there we go. It is now loaded. The HTML is now loaded here. Okay, now I can repeat this on every page, and let me do that quickly. Going to copy the script, and I am going to go over to pomodoro.html, and just going to add that here, and I'm going to also copy this div. I'm going to add that to Pomodoro. Okay, and now if I go over to Pomodoro Timer, oops, that cannot get the, but why is it trying to get it from there? Interesting. Ah, yeah, my bad. So navbar.html is no longer in this folder. It is actually one folder outside. Yeah, there we go. So this works. Uh, so this is done. Library.html. Yep, there we go. And I can copy this particular div right here and paste it here. So library will have it as well. We can put it in expense tracker as well. There we go. And then we can copy this particular div right here and put it inside here. Okay, and finally the box shadow. Going to copy this from here, go over to box shadow, add it right here, and copy this part and go and put it right here. Now every page that we have will actually have a header. Okay, how cool is that? Okay, so, and the reason why I wanted to show you this is because when you move slowly into React world, let's say, you will find this line div id equals to root in like every project inside an index.html, and in the main.jsx or main.tsx or main.ts, like mostly it would be jsx or tsx, you'll have this create root get a, and it will try to get the element by id root, and that is where inside that it will render something. Okay, so all that magic is basically what I showed you, that you are basically saying like what internally is kind of happening. I'm not saying exactly this, It's much better than this crude version. But what is kind of happening is that it's trying to search for this ID, and in the place of that, it is trying to show something, some render something. Okay, so yeah, and that's why basics are great. It's great to learn these things uh, and see them in action. Now I have like around 20 minutes left. I could start the expense tracker project, but I'm not going to. uh, Anything else that anyone wants me to cover? Any particular thing about this, about JavaScript, about anything? Some resources that I had shared before. Uh, One was to learn about Flexbox, which was using Flexbox Froggy, if you remember. So to learn about Flexbox in CSS, you can use the Flexbox Froggy website. That I think is a great resource. If you want to learn about CSS grids, so you had the cssgarden.com, which again I think it's a great resource to learn about grids in general, like how do you divide a page into like rows and columns. Okay, so that is one resource. MDN docs, your best friend to learn. uh, but if you want a high level overview of things, then I think javascript.info is also a great place to actually check out things. uh, this website is apparently originally in Russian, but there is an English translation of it right here. Okay, which actually goes in detail about a lot of things in JavaScript. Okay, like there are loads and loads and loads and loads of concepts in JavaScript. So I think this is a very good resource to learn about, yeah, just JavaScript in general. uh, Pop-ups, we have pop-ups, we have them everywhere. uh, it talks about some examples, a bunch of other things. And yeah, so that is one resource that I would recommend for JavaScript. uh, you don't know JS is kind of, let's say, this multi books that you have about you don't know JS. That is also a good way to learn. So you can buy it if you can find somewhere. I think it's here, it seems. So a bunch of those things as well. So that's a good resource to learn about JavaScript in general. Uh, what else? I don't think there is anything else that comes to mind at least not right now. Uh, Looking forward to all your projects. Looking forward to looking, finding some great solutions to the expense tracker. If you can expand it beyond what I did, that would be amazing as well. Now, to give you some ideas about how you could expand it, potentially. So let me think actually. So one of them would be to add the functionality of adding your income separately and your expenses separately. Okay, I think that's a good functionality to have. So you could give a separate category here, uh, as in as type, whether it's income or expense. So depending on that, depending on if it's a income, then it should be a plus value because you're gaining that money. If it's a expense, then it's a minus value, you're losing that money. And so your total would be kind of, you could have three kinds of total. your total income, your total expense, and basically a subtraction between them, that how much your income you had and how much expense you had. So I think that is a very good addition to have. What else? How do you make content editable? Okay, that's a very interesting thought. And there is a content editable property. Okay, so using this property, you can make things editable. So let's say if you make a div editable, which means that a user can click on it. Yeah, there we go. A user can click on it and start editing it. So maybe that's a good feature to have, like, and it's a very advanced feature to have. Excuse me. But you can start with it. You can give that a try to make content editable. Uh, and if you try to make something editable, then this delete button should change to save button. So then you'll click on it and then it will get saved. So that's an idea. Maybe add more colors, add a dark mode and a light mode, because all a dark mode and a light mode is, like in its very basic sense, is the change of CSS. Okay, the CSS that is getting applied. So you can have a toggle button that changes the CSS. The initial CSS is the light mode CSS. And if someone toggles it, you can have a dark mode CSS. And actually, now CSS also supports nesting. So you can have like dot light, and you can have a background color, let me say red. Uh, and inside this, you can have the H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. So CSS supports nesting. So now inside this, I'm nesting H1. Or actually, I think you can only nest. No, yeah, this will work. And let me give it a color of aqua. This is a very bad contrast. So I'm going to go for a hash. Yep, this one. Okay, now this light, if I apply to this one, okay, so the light is kind of now applied. The colors are being overridden. Which page? Oh, wrong page that I'm checking at, and the wrong page that I'm changing it. Let me go over here, and if I try to give this a class of light, there we go, that's the light color. And now if I want a dark, I could do a dark and these two things. And now I want to change this color to be more towards the darker side, and the H1 color, I want to change that to be orange-ish kind of. And now if you, and this is a bad contrast of course, but if you toggle over to the dark mode, this is what should happen. The new CSS gets applied. Okay, so that's all that is to a light mode and a dark mode, the change in the CSS. Okay, so if the mode is light mode, then you want to do the class list dot add, like remove the previous one and add the new one. What if you have two things, like if you have light comma dark, like a light space dark, the last one gets applied. Okay, so if you have light dark light, then oh specific the city will also matter. So okay, I won't make bets on it actually. Uh, so remove the previous one and then add the new one. Yes, that's the best way. Uh, Also, this is giving me creeps. I'm going to change this aqua to something else. Red is still better, actually. Okay, orange. Yep. There's a question here. Tailwind CSS. Yes, you could use that definitely. But I'm just saying that if you are building from scratch for the first time and you are interested in learning the basics, then in that case, uh, yeah, I would suggest go for this, switching off classes. Okay. So I think that's a good enough session. We had a 6 long sessions about building projects, and I've had a very exciting time, uh, especially about learning JavaScript again, okay, from basics, because there are so many things that I had kind of forgotten in a way when you start building with frameworks. So it was a very good learning experience. I hope this it's same for you all who joined. Uh, Again, every code is on GitHub except for the last project. I will post the code to it, but after 1 week. Okay, I'll wait for anyone who comes ahead with their solution. And with that, thank you so much everyone for joining. Hope you have a very good time. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on your time zone. And if there are no further questions, I think we can end the session right now. I'll give you like your 10 minutes and then you can join Abdullah for a beginner friendly session with Manim, okay, to create animations in Python. Yep, isn't that cool? I think 3 Blue 1 Brown is the channel that uses Manim for animations. So if you are a fan, I think this is a definitely a very, very, very good session to attend. Okay, definitely very unique as well. Okay, so yeah, with that, thank you so much again, everyone. See ya. Bye bye.